I would just say that community members are ones that like take action, and audience members are more passive. I would say like when you're a community member, you're invested. You've taken an extra step. You've gone through some point of the process to like sign up or to join or to buy or whatever it might be, and so you've taken some sort of action. Where audience members are still like in that needing to be convinced stage.
Welcome to the Community Unlocked podcast hosted by Helena and Olena, where we have in-depth conversations with top-tier community leaders and growth experts. Our goal is to provide you with concrete and actionable advice to help you learn about building, launching, and growing your community. Today, our guest is Max Pete, currently building community at Square. With over 5 years of expertise, Max seamlessly blends strategic thinking with genuine empathy in his approach. Beyond his work in community building, he's also an avid writer and public speaker. One of his core passions lies in advocating for limb-different individuals, which has led him to serve on the board of the non-profit organization Design With Us. Additionally, he's a volunteer coach with Nubability. Max, hi. It's so lovely to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on this podcast.
We're really excited to have you here and learn from you today. You're a community builder. You've had quite some years of experience now, and we're just really curious to know, how did you get into this world?
Yeah, interesting story. So I was freelancing for about 6 years, doing website design, advertising, and at the start of the pandemic, I was just really missing being able to network with people in person and connect with other freelancers. And so I was just kind of feeling stuck, and I didn't know really necessarily where to go. So I was like Googling online freelance meetups or freelance communities, came across one called Freelance Founders, and was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Let me join as a member. It was a paid membership, so it was a bit of an investment to sign up and join, but I was like, all right, I'll try it for a month, see if I like it. And, if I do, then I'll stay. And if not, I'll just try something else. Ended up spending so much time in the community, connecting with other freelancers, helping with support, answer questions, attending events, helping with resources. And it got to a point where the founder of the community was hiring their first like part-time community manager and reached out to me. I was like, hey, Max, like I have this role open. Would you want it? And I had no idea what a community manager was. I'd never done it before. But I was like, sure. Like I was kind of in that moment too of like looking for a career change as well. And that just really introduced me to the whole community space, like that this is a whole career that you can do, that there's other people doing it, have been doing it for years. And I just felt really aligned with the work that I was doing. And yeah, haven't turned back since, and just feel like I'm really invested in the space and want to continue to grow into it.
So you basically got into community building world through joining a community that
Mm-hmm.
they inspired you as a community builder.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually like a bit of a piece of advice I always tell people who are interested in getting to community. I'm like, join one, be active, see what you like, see what you don't like, message people, take notes. And like that experience is going to teach you a lot, because sometimes, you just have to like test the waters before you fully commit to something, or you just want to, you know, before you make a transition, or if like you're wanting to, work for a place, like see how their communities run, see how they're doing things, and see if it's actually something that you want to be a part of. It's like, yeah, it's something that I think is super impactful, if you do it.
I'm part of some community builder communities, and it's definitely, people are really open to collaborating. And if you just want to volunteer, I think it's really welcome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You recently left Super High, a kind of product and course communities where people
Mm-hmm.
sign up to different courses, and you basically led the community there. And as far as we understand, it's kind of part product, part community of practice. So we're wondering what it was like and what the main differences were for you.
Yeah. So I'll first start off in saying, like, I believe it was like Brian Oblinger in one of his talks or podcasts, he was mentioning that like a good community encompasses everything. So it encompasses practice, product support, everything. Like you should be able to find all your needs there. But you know, there are a lot of communities just for community practice or just support communities. And so I think that and I can't take credit for the design of this community originally because it was around before I joined, but I think that it was originally set up in a really cool pathway where members who sign up for a course can get added to the community, and then they mainly go there to like introduce themselves, to say hello, how where they're from, like what courses they're taking, and then there's a whole list of support channels where members can ask for support depending on what course they're on, get help from either the super high team directly or other uh, community members who have taken the course. Um, and then there's also a ton of channels that members can join, like career advice, accountability club, self-care club, where members can, just chat outside of just course related or product related support. And it's, from my own journey, because I actually joined that community in 2018 when I was taking their courses. And so like my journey, and I feel like a lot of students' journeys, like they'll sign up, they'll go directly into support areas because they're just taking courses. And then that's how they're involved in the community in the first like 6 months. Then they kind of finish the courses that they're interested in, or they might be a break between their next course or whatever it might be. And then they start to get involved more in like the community of practice area. And so I think that it does really well to like blend the two together because it keeps members around, right? Like even if they're in courses and they need support, or if they're outside of the course and they just want to chat and connect with other members, it's a cool space for anyone to just be around and connect. And so I think that that's why, a good community encompasses everything, because if you're just focused on one thing, the members will just get that one thing and leave, and there's not enough reason for them to continue to come back. And so the more offerings that you have, the more areas where members can connect and chat and collaborate, it's just going to help with retention.
Yeah, and it feels very natural. Like then you have a course and then you kind of collaborate with other people and speak about the materials, get some support. I'm wondering, like speaking about the product, because community of practice, a combination of practice and product, like it makes total sense for me. But then you think about, I don't know, some SaaS product, and it can be not that exciting. And then
Yeah.
you need to build a community of this product because probably
Yeah.
founder just they want to have a closer connection, build better product. And first of all, maybe is it like possible to build a community for any product, or if it is possible or not possible, like what would be the how to start building?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I would say like technically it is possible for any product, anything to have a community. Now, do I think all products should have communities? No, I don't, because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that just might not be aligned. The product might be not necessarily like a really great fit, and there's not a huge demand to have a community push behind it at that moment. Um, but I still think that like, if you are building a product, it can be really important to have a community and to get them involved in small areas where it's like feedback or testing things or having some sort of, if you do have a good group of users that have advocating for your product, like how can you leverage that to invite more people into that? Or, I was just at CMX a couple weeks ago, and Francisco, who's one of the global community managers at Notion, was there, and he was talking about how like Notion really used their community to leverage just like building things in the for their product, how to like get the community members involved, and a lot of it was just like meeting them where they are. So a lot of Notion users were on Reddit commenting, posting about Notion, and so the community team did a lot of work in going into Reddit to like responding back to people, to like creating that environment there versus having everyone come back to their own platform. And so I think that's a really smart area and thing to do is like, instead of like focusing, a lot of money building your own platform right away, like meet your members where they are at the start and like how you can like build those relationships before you invest a ton of money in something else. And yeah, and so I think that's where, if you're starting off as a product, like, are members talking about your stuff now? Are they on Reddit? Are they on Twitter or X? Are they on LinkedIn? Like, how can you kind of meet them where they're at already, and then start building those relationships to like grow your community?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And we chatted to Anna Maria Dorgo from Butter a couple of weeks
Oh,
ago.
nice.
The way she called it for her for the community at Butter, she had a group of what they called shapers, basically the members who were there from the very start, who they invited to build together with them. It was a really good way to do it. We thought it's pretty interesting. So it kind of resonates with what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. The name of Shapers, and yeah, just meeting them, yeah, where they are and how that you can leverage what they're doing to um, shape the product, to shape the community. Yeah, it's a smart idea.
Yeah, really, really love that too. Talking about, people, community members or users who are already on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, um, I think it's easy if you don't have the experience and knowledge, or maybe if you're just your first time building community, it's sometimes hard for people to see the difference between building an audience and building a community. And I know you kind of have both. You've built your personal brand and your audience, which is really cool, but then you've also built communities. So wonder, how can people distinguish between the two and make sure they don't fall into building an audience that's not actually a community?
Yeah, it's a really, really good call out. I think from my like marketing background, the way I look at it is like the audience is the top of funnel, like the people that you're just introducing to like what you're doing, so that they can get familiar with the brand of the product of whatever it is, and they're just like, okay, now I'm kind of aware. And then the way I look at the community is like when you're getting closer to the bottom of the funnel, people who are like supporters, purchasers, people that like have like kind of gone through the steps. And so, and the way I treat it is like, if you're building a community, like you're trying to get people on the platform so that they can, be advocates and stuff. Like, okay, how can I leverage third party tools to like educate people about like what I'm working on, to kind of move them through that part to like go to our own platform, or to become an advocate, or to become an ambassador, or whatever it is. Like if you do have an audience versus community, like there's a lot of overlap. I would just say that community members are ones that like take action, and audience members are more passive. I would say. I would say like when you're a community member, you're invested. You've taken an extra step. You've gone through some point of the process to like sign up, or to join, or to buy, or whatever it might be, and so you've taken some sort of action. Where audience members are still like in that needing to be convinced stage, that educated stage, right?
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think what really jumped out from what you said is that community members are active, they have taken action, they're kind of, or they can, maybe there are those shapers that we just talked about. And audience are the ones who are maybe who are passive, who are like just watching, they haven't taken the step just yet. And maybe one day they can become community members, but not everyone will. And that's perhaps
Mm-hmm.
also is okay, right?
Yeah. And speaking about, I'm always asking about founders and like how to build a community. So like the topic that I would want you to cover and help us to understand, okay, if I am a company founder and I really want to have a community, imagine I do have probably my product market fit. I do have some, I don't know, hundreds of users using the product. What would be my first steps? Like, what should I do? Should I, like, first maybe what kind of people should I hire? What kind of goals I should set up? Like, basically, how I can initially set up my community if I wish to build the community for success.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think depending on who you ask, you're gonna get a million different answers. So I would say, like, from my perspective, if I'm launching a product, launching a community, trying to like get this thing off the ground, um, I would probably try to do as much as I can on my own, honestly, before I bring in external people, because I want to know firsthand of like problem areas that I can fix and that I need help and support by fixing. I think sometimes like people are hiring a first community manager and they have no idea what they need. And so there's a lot of that initial confusion in the get go and where it just creates a lot of problems. And so again, I'm using a Notion example here, but like I remember their founder, you know, when they launched, he was doing a lot of the support tickets. He was doing a lot of the product feedback, a lot of that part of the process. And I think that that's really important because when they grew, he knew a lot of problem areas. He knew what he needed support on and how they could develop. And if you don't have that experience directly as like a founder, there's a lot of disconnect, right? Of hiring someone else to come in and do it. And so I think like first thing is like doing it yourself, asking um, your customers already or people that are in your network for feedback, getting them involved in that process. And then as you kind of slowly see like where you need that help and support in, that's when you can be like, okay, I know I need someone that's like really strategy focused. So I'm going to focus on that. Or I know I need someone to really help me on support because I'm just bogged down in this and I need that area. And so I think that would just give you a little bit more clarity in that process. At least from my perspective, that's what I would do. Um, because if you don't know what problems you need to fix, how does the person you're going to hire know what problems? And you're just going to be way better aligned on that. Like I've, you know, recently gone through a lot of job interviews and being presented contract work and things like that. Like there was a lot of things where like, yeah, hey, we want to build this community, but there was a lot of like, they didn't know what they wanted. And I couldn't necessarily answer that question for them. Like I could help get them, you know, there, but like there was a lot of things where it's just like there, I could just see a lot of disconnect in the beginning where I think that if they kind of started that process themselves, that they could kind of get to where they needed to be and then hire someone to help them with that. So I hope that was helpful.
Very helpful, and I can totally relate as well. I've heard from founders who are just starting out and they heard this a buzzword community and then they think, oh yeah, I'd love that, so I'm going to hire someone who can figure it out for me. But when you ask them, okay, but what do you want, they're like, I'm actually not so sure at the moment. And that's and that's also good, good to ask because it also makes them think, okay, I have to first take these steps before I bring someone in and before it turns into confusion and creates problems, as you said. So totally very valuable tips, I think.
And speaking about the decision how to actually communicate the value of community in the organization and how to make a proper setup, then the community team is injected properly in the organizational structure and making the community team kind of very cross-functional and working with all different other departments. Like what would be the proper setup here?
Yeah, that's a big question, but I think as we've seen through this year and just going forward too, like community is going to really have to continue to show impact and show like ROI. Like we're out of that honeymoon phase of just being this buzzword of like, hey, it's exciting, let's scale this team to now being like, okay, we have a team now. Like, how can we show our management executive level of like what we're doing is creating return on investment. If that means we're driving new revenue, if that means we're saving money by retention, or we're helping with support deflect ticket costs, or whatever, or we're adapt the communities being able to do a lot more like product adoption where that wouldn't be possible before. I think that depending on like what your where you work and like what their main needs are, like that's important to figure out. And so I think one way of doing that is just making sure that your direct manager or your team lead or whatever it might be, like you're very aligned on like, okay, what are the actual goals? What are we focusing on? Is that retention? Is that acquisition? Is that both? Is that, you know, all the things? Because then that's going to help you align with like what you're doing in the community to, it goes back to that goals, right? Like, you know, sometimes we think of really cool events or cool initiatives or X, Y, and Z. And I still think it's great to like do those every once in a while. But a lot of times, like if you can't directly correlate that back to like a business goal, then when times get tough, like we've seen this year, companies are gonna be like, hey, like that's a nice to have, not a need to have. And that's why a lot of times like community and marketing, other things get axed right away because they just can't see the immediate value. But I do think that like you should be making sure whatever you're doing in the community work goes back to a goal and that you're able to like tell that story. Brian, I'm gonna give Brian Oblinger another a shout out. He has a community academy called Community Strategy Academy, and he has a ton of great courses on like retention, engagement, onboarding, all these things that like he'll show you like how to measure that and to like report it back to your team lead or executive team. And I think that that's just really helpful because, you know, if you're showing that like, hey, you're making money or saving money or whatever it is, then like I said, when times get tough, your leaders are gonna be like, oh, well, like we need this thing. And I think as community people in general, like we're just gonna need to start being able to be better at that moving forward because otherwise it's gonna be really hard for us to get more money, to get, you know, more resources and to potentially keep our jobs when times get tough if our leaders aren't seeing the value of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's it. It really makes me think about someone who we talked to recently as well, and who said you just have to come to terms that you need to learn the way to communicate with your leadership, and you need to speak to them in their language. When for us, community builders, it can be something, something that we see a lot of value in, and it makes sense to us. It may not make sense to someone in leadership, whoever it is. You need to show this return on investment. So you really need to learn, okay, how can I communicate it in a way that it makes sense and really shows this value in the way that they are measuring it.
The next question is about the community builders. So you mentioned like you definitely need the people who will be building your community, but then what are the skill set of features, your tips and tricks for founders? Okay, how to hire a proper community manager if they already kind of decided to hire?
At least from my background, like I'm very thankful that I did a lot of project management before going into community work. I feel like if you're good at just keeping aware of like and keeping projects on timelines and tasks, and you know like what's happening, like you're going to excel in this field because a lot of times, you know, we're a team of one or we're a really small team and we have to juggle a ton of stuff. And so like having someone with project management experience or like focus areas and project management tools that your company might be using is going to be super important. So like, you know, with like details and everything going on, I think writing is a huge part of our work. Like we write all the time, like announcements, emails, posts, guidelines, documentation, like we're always writing. And so like having someone that has a writing background or maybe has their own blog or can, you know, showcase like their own writing style, I think is super important as well. And I guess it depends on like what your focus area of your community is. Like if it is more support or if it is more um, like sales or marketing or whatever it might be, like to have someone with similar background in that experience. It might not have to do with community, but like, you know, like before community, I did a lot of digital marketing and advertising. And so how can I leverage that experience into like jobs I'm applying for that might kind of fit that realm? And so if you're a founder looking to hire and you might be very heavily focused in product, like maybe there's some product managers who have a really good background that you could leverage that you want to look out for that community work. And so I think that that's the beauty of like community is that there's so many different pieces outside of it that mesh well with it. Um, you can look for that skill set. And then lastly, like for a soft skill, it's like empathy, right? Like, can the person like relate to what the members are going through or the problems that they might be facing? And can they like really like put themselves in their shoes? You want someone that has some sort of passion for the industry that you're in. Now, I don't think you necessarily like, you know, I don't think that you need to find someone that's like the most passionate about the space to like be a perfect fit. Like you can find some people that might not really care, but they can kind of still put themselves in their shoes. But I think that if you do find someone that has like some sort of personal background or preference or passion to like the product or the space that you're in, that helps go a long way because then that person will be able to like really they just know the conversations that the members are having. They know the problem areas. They know the struggles, the pain points, and they can like really jump in and help that. But that's something that you can't really teach. You just have to get through experience or what you have.
And empathy, definitely. For a moment, I was like, "Are you not going to mention empathy?" But then you did. I was like, I think it's a really big one for us. I
Mm-hmm.
think, building relationships and this skill connects a lot to empathy, or at least that's what I want to believe, or what I think.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely the people who can relate, who can connect, who can really feel what others are feeling. Sometimes it's a really powerful skill, and I don't think you can measure that, and that's the tricky part here, but I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
massive plus.
Yeah, and too, like it's just gonna make from a community manager perspective, I think it's gonna make your job more fun and just like something more exciting and more like you're going to want to do better work if you're like passionate about the space that you're in. I think that's a beautiful part of our work as community people is like we get really passionate about what we do. And if you're in an industry that you like really enjoy and like can thrive in, like it's just going to make that work so much better and like just more fulfilling. And so that's why I like that's my piece of advice is if you can find a lane or avenue that you're like really in, like go in that, versus like making yourself fit somewhere that like you're not interested in, you don't really care, it's just a job or it's just an opportunity because it's going to eventually show. And it's not going to be a great experience for you or the community members that are involved.
Yeah, you definitely cannot be transactional in the community.
Mm-hmm.
It will feel immediately by other people.
And imagine working, trying to build community for a product that you are really not interested in. It might
Or
be,
don't like.
or don't like, or like it's going to be some miserable time that you'd be having. Yeah. I think it's easy. I think if you don't really do your research and understand what you're getting into, you can end up in that space. So do your research, not to end up there.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember a few posts where you wrote about the way you engaged your community in a meaningful way. And I was wondering if you could give a couple of examples, because I remember there were some really good ones that really also showed this magic of like cherishing and showing the appreciation of your community. And I think it would really be interesting for people to hear.
So I'll say one is like, I'm really big in positive reinforcement and acknowledgement. Like when I get praise or someone's like, "Oh, Max, like you killed it here, you did great," or whatever it is, like that motivates me to just do more because I'm like, "Oh, like that's just how I like to like that's the feedback I love getting." And so I took that same approach with like community members of being like, "Hey, like if they're super involved in the community, I'm just gonna message them directly. I'm gonna send them a note, like whatever it is, and be like, hey, like thank you so much just for being active, for supporting, for doing X, Y, and Z. It really doesn't take that much. It takes like 5 minutes to write a message. And I've just seen the impact of like being like, oh, like thank you for noticing, or thank you for recognizing this, or thank you for, acknowledging my work. And so, and just seeing that. And then I was like, okay, how can I build off that more? And I think that's where like the idea of like surprise and delights came from, of being like, there's a lot of members in the community that are just doing incredible work for free, like just wanting to support and just like do stuff because they're great people. How can I like reward them just for that and it just being awesome? And so like that's where it's like, how can we, send them dessert, or how can we buy them a custom thing that they've been looking for? How can we support their education efforts or whatever it might be? And like kind of like digging through that to like, you know, to do. And like I was at a really great place where my boss totally understood it and he was like, hey, here's monthly budget for that. Like just go do with it as you please. And really being able to like build that and build surprise and delights. I think it made a huge impact in the members' lives, and then also, they would show up in the community more. Like they'd be more engaged, they would post more, they would support more because, when you get acknowledged for the work that you're doing, you're gonna be like, oh, like I want to get more of that feedback. I want to like participate more because that feels good. And so it worked out really well on that end. And just like giving back to members who are constantly showing up and also too, like what we did with Surprise and Delights is like, it wasn't just for members who were like excelling. It was also for people that might have gotten laid off or might have just been having a bad day, or maybe like something tragic happened in their life, or like whatever it was. Like how can we like show them that like one, that we're listening and like it's a safe space for them to continue to share their stories in the community, but two, to just be like, like, yeah, when times get tough, like, we want to show them that like, we support them. If that means like they got laid off, like, okay, let's give them a free year of membership to their courses so they can continue to learn. Also too, like rewarding members, getting them more involved in like highlighting our work to a bigger audience, right? Because like Super High had a ton, like we had over 100,000 email subscribers. We had like 16,000 Twitter followers, like 60,000 Instagram followers. So like we were like, okay, how can we like showcase their work to a bigger audience to get them more followers, to get them more recognition? And so it's like creating stuff like the Hall of Fame to showcase their work on our website, and then to blast it out on our socials. If that was like, we had some community members who were doing some amazing work, so we had them do newsletter takeovers where they could like write a newsletter for us and like showcase their work and like what they're doing and like what their focus areas are. And so it's all about like leveraging our network to support their efforts, which I think was really great.
Yeah, all those I can resonate with. And I think we sometimes underestimate the small things, like reaching out and, as you said, just saying, hey, I saw what you did, it's amazing, or just sending a thank you note, or just asking how people are doing and jumping on a one-on-one call and building that relationship. And when people feel like they're seen, like they're heard, and that they're part of something, it makes such a huge difference. And and then everything else kind of comes together. And of course there are other things, like you said, Surprise and Delights, giving them the bigger audience. It's also all amazing, but I feel like it always comes from this kind of one-on-one connection, when you really show that you see
Yeah.
that you see people and you care, because we all want that at the end. I want that. I love when people do that with
Yeah,
me. And when that's done,
exactly.
I just want to do more. And I think it's just human nature. It's just this positive, what's it called? Positive reinforcement.
Like reinforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm totally like that. And I love, I love to see that. And I love people light up, when they're recognized and seen.
And speaking about the future, so I really want to touch this topic. Like, what do you think in the future? Will it be more communities or less communities? Will they be different from how they are organized right now? And also an additional question regarding AI. I'm really interested because like many areas right now not disrupted, complemented by AI, disrupted by AI. But community, for me, I can imagine optimization of some processes powered by AI, but I couldn't really imagine how it can change the community as a kind of substance.
Yeah.
AI. I really like to hear your take on this.
yeah, can't be replaced, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's what,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With AI, I would say that, you know, it's not going to replace community. I really don't think it is. I think it's going to just leverage a lot of things that it's just going to be easier for members to search or find or change. I think community is always going to have that human touch to it. Like there's always going to be someone that's going to be behind the scenes, the connecting people, the supporting, whatever it might be. I think just where the AI part comes into it is that there's going to be, it just might help with connecting tools better or allowing search to be better or, other things that like on the operations side, for members to like be able to access more or like transcribing events where members can not have to attend something live and they can just read a whole transcription, or notes or whatever it might be, and how like as community builders we can leverage those tools to do that. But it's never going to replace. I mean, I could be wrong. Like we could be listening to this 50 years from now and be like, wow, Max was totally wrong on this. But I think that there's always going to be some sort of human touch to it, especially as technology grows. Like humans always want to interact with other humans. Like that's never going to change, right? Like look at in-person events are coming back. One is that because people really miss that connection with one another, right? Like we really crave that. And so I think with the rise of tools and technology, like we're going to still want to connect with one another. And I think that that's never going to change. So I think that AI was going to help, and it might take some jobs, it might change some responsibilities or how things are done. Like I totally can see that happening, but I don't think it's going to completely replace the human element of community building. And for that, I think that we're going to be good. It's going to be good for the industry as we grow.
Amazing. I think it's only going to grow and get better and evolve, and we will keep learning and, yeah, shining. Max, thank you so much for coming to our podcast today. We've learned so much from you, and I'm very inspired to continue my work and continue this amazing project and keep learning from our fellow community friends. Thank you so much, and we hope to chat to you very soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If our conversation resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your ratings and reviews are invaluable in helping us reach more like-minded people. You can find all our episodes and learn more about the show at communityunlocked.substack.com. See you in the next episode.